Today, we're diving into a critical situation unfolding in one of Europe's most influential economies, France. France, the second largest economy in the Eurozone, is facing unprecedented economic challenges that could have ripple effects far beyond its borders. With mounting debt, political instability, and a welfare system under immense pressure, the country finds itself at a crucial crossroads. In this video, we'll explore how France got here, why its economic model is struggling to adapt to modern realities, and what the consequences might be, not just for France, but for Europe and the global economy. Historical context. France's economic journey is unique among industrialized nations. Unlike its European neighbors who embraced large-scale industrialization, France historically developed through smaller, artisanal industries. This created an economy with many small competing firms rather than industrial giants. This distinctive path had profound implications. French workers maintained more power over their employers because there were more, smaller companies driving industry. This laid the foundation for France's more egalitarian work culture that values worker protections, shorter working hours, and secure retirements. After World War II, France recognized the need for larger enterprises to compete globally. The government stepped in with a policy known as dirigisme, essentially directing the economy by creating state enterprises in key sectors like banking, transportation, and telecommunications. This compromise between communism and pure capitalism allowed France to build one of the most generous welfare states in the world. If you got sick, the state covered your medical bills. If you lost your job, government unemployment checks kept you afloat. And when you retired, a generous pension was waiting for you. For decades, this model seemed to work beautifully. Growth was strong, living standards were high, and France cemented itself as Europe's second largest economy. The turning point. But there was a catch. This generous system came with a hefty price tag, and although taxes were already high, that price still needed to be covered with debt. In fact, France hasn't balanced its budget once since 1974. For more than half a century, deficits have been the rule, not the exception. Initially, this wasn't a major concern. When the euro was created, borrowing costs fell to historic lows. Politicians leaned on debt instead of reforms. After all, why risk sparking protests when borrowing felt painless? Then came the global financial crisis of 2008. Like everyone else, France was forced to spend billions to rescue its economy. As people lost jobs, families who once paid into the system now depended on it for survival. In just 2 years, France's debt jumped from around 60% to 80% of its GDP. This should have been a moment of reckoning. But while countries like Greece or Spain were forced into painful bailouts, France slipped under the radar. Instead of tightening its finances, it leaned on the European Central Bank's low interest rates and continued borrowing. The COVID pandemic delivered another massive blow. When the pandemic froze the economy, France poured hundreds of billions into furloughs, bailouts, and emergency healthcare. By the time the dust settled, its debt had surged past 110% of GDP, more than its entire economy produces in a year. The pension problem. At the heart of France's economic challenges lies its pension system. France now spends more on pensions than almost any other country in the world, over 350 billion euros annually, which is 14% of the entire economy. To put that in perspective, pensions now cost the French state more than it spends on education, defense, and transport combined. But the real issue isn't just how much pensions cost, it's how fast the balance between workers and retirees has flipped. When the system was first built, fewer than 15% of the population were retirees. Today, that number has jumped to 22%. By 2050, it's expected to reach nearly 30%, almost 1 in 3 people. And it's not only that there are more retirees, they're also living longer. Today, the average French citizen lives almost 11 years longer than 50 years ago, meaning a decade more of pension checks and healthcare bills. The French pension system works on a pay-as-you-go basis, where current workers fund current retirees. But with fewer workers supporting more retirees and productivity growth slowing, the math simply doesn't add up anymore. The reform dilemma. Everyone in France knows the system can't continue like this. Economists warn about it, investors see it, and even the government admits it. But every time leaders try to fix it, the country erupts in protest. In 2023, more than 3 million people marched through the streets in a single day to fight President Macron's pension reform. The proposal? Raising the retirement age from 62 to 64, still lower than Germany, Italy, or the United States. But in France, the reaction was explosive. Strikes shut down transport, garbage piled up in Paris, and protests went on for weeks. Nearly 70% of the population opposed the reform, even though economists were nearly unanimous that it was necessary. When Parliament resisted, Macron forced the bill through using a constitutional loophole. The reform technically passed, but politically it came at an enormous cost. Macron's party lost its majority in Parliament, leaving the government too weak to push through major changes. Market reactions and risks. Investors are watching closely. They're seeing rising debt, an aging population, and a government too divided to act. And confidence is slipping. For decades, France was one of Europe's safest borrowers. But now its interest rates are rising as investors demand more money in return for taking on that risk. For the first time ever, it's now just as expensive for France to borrow money as it is for Italy, a country traditionally seen as much riskier. The numbers France is sitting at today look eerily familiar. In 2010, just before Greece's crisis exploded, its 10-year bonds were trading at around 3.3%. Right now, France is sitting at almost the exact same level. But here's the crucial difference. France isn't Greece. It's 20% of the entire Eurozone. With debt of 3.3 trillion euros, bailing it out wouldn't just be difficult, it might be impossible. Broader implications. If France can't keep its house in order, it undermines the credibility of the entire Eurozone. The euro was built on a promise that every member state would keep their finances under control so the single currency could stay stable. If markets ever pushed France's borrowing costs to a breaking point, the European Central Bank would almost certainly step in. But that would create moral hazard. If France gets rescued, why would any government ever cut spending? The uncomfortable truth is that this is all unprecedented. The Eurozone has no real playbook for this. If France tips into crisis, the entire Eurozone would face an impossible choice. Either step in and rescue them, risking political backlash in Germany and the Netherlands, or refuse and let one of the founding pillars collapse. France stands at a crossroads. It can continue trying to maintain its generous welfare state while hoping economic growth somehow catches up, or it can embrace painful reforms that might spark social unrest. The country that once balanced artisanal craftsmanship with industrial progress now must find a new balance between social protection and economic reality. What happens in France won't stay in France. As Europe's second-largest economy, its fate is intertwined with the future of the euro and the European project itself. The coming years will determine whether France can reinvent its economic model for the 21st century or whether it becomes the epicenter of Europe's next major crisis. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth economic coverage. Until next time.